Thank you very much for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure being here to provide the viewpoints of the pharmaceutical innovative sector. I'm very thankful to the host for inviting me, and very thankful to the previous speakers for all the supportive comments about intellectual property. One of the things about IP that I would like to say is that it drives innovation by causing people to innovate around the patents. Merely copying does not drive innovation. So there's a great deal of benefits that patents provide other than the protection of the investments. So the theme of my talk is IP enforcement as a core ingredient for Europe's competitiveness, which has already been touched on by numerous other speakers. In 2021, President Ursula von der Leyen hailed Europe as the pharmacy of the world. By any measure, this is true. Europe is the largest exporter of medicines globally, manufacturing about 64% of the world's on-patent products. Europe continues to have an incredible pharmaceutical sector. The industry is Europe's highest value-added sector, employing upwards of 2 million people in research, development, and particularly manufacturing. And as DG Jorna just mentioned, the vast amount of investment, over $2 billion in a program, speaks to the high risk of entering into the pharmaceutical area, where 94% of projects that are started never reach the market. However, the sector faces serious headwinds and setbacks. Despite escaping the announcement of tariffs on exports to the US, the sector is bracing for shocks and upheaval in the years ahead. In response to the geopolitical turmoil, the ambition of the EU should be twofold: to regain EU competitiveness and reinvigorate its healthcare systems. Strong legal systems and intellectual property enforcement are absolute prerequisites for this. They're the foundation upon which the EU and national governments can rebuild European research base for the benefit of patients and health systems worldwide. With regards to IP, two particular issues require attention in the EU. Firstly, the threats to public health from pharmaceutical crimes are growing rapidly, both in scale and complexity. The estimated global value of falsified medicines exceeds $4.4 billion, and 90% of online pharmacies operate illegally. Pharmaceutical crime, whether through falsified medicines or illicit trafficking, endangers lives and erodes trust in healthcare systems. This is not just a criminal issue, it is a global public health emergency. The rise of e-commerce and social media has created new channels for counterfeiters. Professionalized criminal networks exploit opaque websites and global online market platforms. The COVID-19 pandemic further accelerated online sales, exposing vulnerabilities in supply chains and increasing demand for unregulated products. We are now facing a perfect storm of global interconnectivity, economic instability, and technological innovation leveraged by traffickers. The EU has a central role to play, leading by example and practice. The Megaron Convention, adopted by the Council of Europe, is a landmark treaty that criminalizes the falsification of medical products. The EU Falsified Medicines Directive mandates safety features and traceability across the supply chain. But these tools are not enough. For instance, only 23 countries have ratified Megaron. In addition, many magistrates lack training in pharmaceutical law. And online platforms are still not held accountable for hosting the offers of illegal drugs. Nevertheless, I would say that Europe is one of the global leaders against IP crime and should make every effort to influence countries to adopt similar measures. Unfortunately, we see a clear trend and intentionality within new EU legislation, such as the general pharmaceutical legislation, of diluting intellectual property and of measures that will make IP enforcement more costly and slow across member states. There are many reasons for the new legislation, but ultimately, Europe's pharmaceutical sector faces an existential threat from a perfect storm of excessive regulations, dilution of IP rights and enforceability, and financial burdens that undermine competitiveness precisely when global rivals are aggressively courting these industries. Diluting IP and enforceability is a huge mistake and is akin to scoring a goal upon itself by Europe. We hope that national governments that have an interest in keeping innovation in Europe will stop the reduction in periods of regulatory data protection for pharmaceutical innovation and also stop the so-called BOLAR exemption, which will encourage generics companies to enter the market before patent expiry. Europe has an incredible pharmaceutical sector that is a major asset to the continent. However, like many sectors in Europe, it is under threat. Strong IP enforcement is one area in which Europe has a competitive edge globally. Protecting this and not diluting it can be one of the strongest ways to safeguard key innovative sectors and indeed ensure that Europe weathers the trade and geopolitical storm. Strong, enforceable IP is the surest way to drive creativity and innovation and ensure Europe remains the pharmacy of the world, where the breakthrough medicines for tomorrow will be discovered, developed, and made. Thank you again for inviting me to give the perspective of our sector. I look forward to the conversations throughout the day.